السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the first keynote lecture of MIMC. If you haven't done so already, please take your seats. You'll notice that the entire room here is now empty. There's no sisters on the right side. So I encourage all the brothers, please move. If you want, you can come over here to the right side. Please move up as much as possible and take your seats, inshallah. And if there are any sisters inside the hall, this is where I kindly ask you to leave, inshallah. As well, it'll be a talk that I have with the usher team afterwards. But on a real note, please move up, pay attention, because today's talk is very, very, very important. The topic that will be addressed by Ustadh is one that we often overlook and don't give its due diligence and importance when it comes to our society and how we treat manhood, or rujula. Ustadh will be covering the responsibilities of a man, or a rijal, and the character and the mental maturity that is required from all of us to be from the men that the Prophet ﷺ set an example for through his compassion, through his truthfulness, and through his tenacity, amongst many, many other characteristics that are consistent with being a man. If you saw the poster, you would have seen the ayah, الرجال قوامون على النساء. And that ayah, unfortunately, has many misconceptions that are tied to it. And that's something we'll be addressing today, and addressing those misconceptions that are attached with it. In the Ummah today, we find lots of examples where men are of two types. One, where the man is too strict upon their actions and interactions dealing with their family, and to which the Ustadh will cover the need and manifestation of sacrifice in his talk. And the other, where the man is lazy. He doesn't care about himself, he doesn't care about his well-being, and he doesn't care about the state of his family. To which the Ustadh will be addressing this as well. Both of these, without question, are bad, and it's important for us as men who are supposed to be representing Islam in the right way, of rijal that follow the example of the Prophet ﷺ to find the fine line and balance between the two. I want you to ask yourselves, would the Prophet ﷺ, was he a'udhu billah, was he like this? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Of course not. He, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was one of the most compassionate when dealing with others, but he never backed away from putting his best foot forward, from working his hardest. He was always proactive in his approach, and anything that was not in his control, he left up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is also part of what Ustadh will be addressing, which is the balance between being stern and stoic, being stern and soft, being stoic. All of these characteristics make up the prophetic manhood, and that's the final part of what will be covered in the talk, inshallah. Now, I've done enough talking. Obviously, you didn't come here to listen to me talk about this topic. For those of you who don't know Ustadh Syed Hassan was raised in Toronto. He studied mathematics at the University of Waterloo and psychology at York University before pursuing a graduate certification as a life coach and counselor. He completed his traditional ijazah and the Islamic sciences in 2012 and is currently finishing a specialization in the sciences of tafsir as part of completing a 9-year Alamiya program at Mathaba Institute. His ijazah spans the sciences of qira'at, kutub al-hadith, text and aqidah, etc. He serves as the vice principal and dean of academics at Al-Manarat Heights High School and is the director and lead instructor at Taqwa Academy. He is visiting us today all the way from Waterloo. Without further ado, it's my utmost pleasure and honor to call upon Ustadh Syed Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're very scattered today. I'm going to have to be moving left to right. Are we getting a Quran recitation?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Inshallah, we'll have a quick Quran recitation and we'll get to the talk, inshallah. My bad. Inshallah, we will continue with the lecture and we'll come back to the Quran recitation afterwards, inshallah. Apologies for the delay.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. يا رب لك الحمد حتى ترضى، اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله. I hope everybody is doing well. We want to begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of the blessings that we're all partaking in. Most of these blessings completely unknowingly to us. And then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like He's gathered us here underneath this beautiful roof, that He gather us on the day of judgment, underneath the shade of His throne, and in the proximity of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As to what follows, today we're going to be doing a cursory look. This is not a deep dive, because I have about 40 minutes with you. Before we do QA, we have Asad coming in at 4:30, so we have to respect the time for Salah. Our goal today is to take an excerpt from a work that it's been going on for the past 2 years, titled The Maxims for Masculinity. And so we're going to be looking at about 12 maxims from this book. The book has about 40 maxims in it. And I picked and chose these specific ones because I felt that this would be most relevant to us. The hope is that we can finish in time and then we can have a very robust Q&A where I can disappoint all of you by not answering your questions. But we'll see how far we get, inshallah. So, first off, we're going to be studying this topic through the avenue of maxims. And so what are maxims? Maxims or aphorisms. So can I use my laptop because this is formatting is a little off?
Sure.
Yeah. Apologize, you guys. So maxims are general truths, fundamental principles, or rules of conduct. So these are little short phrases, sentences, but embedded in these short phrases or sentences is profound wisdom. That's how it's supposed to be. And so they are pieces of wisdom or aphorisms. The word maxim comes from the same word as some of you are engineers know. There are certain things that have axioms, foundational principles by which you build everything else up, right? We get the word maximum from here. Maximum comes from maximus, which is the most important foundational principle. And then if you get rid of everything else and keep the important, that becomes the maximum or the greatest of something, right? Okay. So it's generally presented in a language which has depth and often employs rhetoric, as we'll see throughout our journey. And a mention of the aphorism can bring up many ideas to light up the mind simultaneously. So that's what we're going to be doing with this topic. We're going to go through a bunch of maxims. The reason I do this is because it's very difficult in these type of lectures to take notes. But if we have maxims, then all you have in your notes are those 10 to 12 things that we covered. And each one, the moment you read it, the entire discussion should come to mind. So this is a rapid technique of doing notes on topics that are very in-depth. So why this topic? So when McMaster reached out to me with regards to this topic, the first thing that came into my mind was that this should be something that everybody is getting exposed to, men anywhere. And most importantly, actually, you'd be surprised, but even sisters. Even sisters. Especially sisters, because they're the ones who are in charge of raising the next generation. And if they're not raising men, we're going to have a problem 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So, one of the most important dilemmas of the modern world is the fact that God, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is out of the equation of any interaction. So secularism and its greatest pitfall. This is captured in the Quran in verse 19 of Surah 59, Surah Al-Hashr, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَعْدَ أَقُولَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ لَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهِ. Do you never dare become an individual who has neglected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have forgotten Allah. And you see that fa there? That's fa of iqab. As a result, ta'qiban. As a result, ansahum anfusahum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make these people who forget Allah forget themselves. So men will not know what it means to be a man. A lady will not know what it means to be a lady. Human beings will not know what it means to be a human being. This is one of the curses placed upon a people who have neglected Allah. Because it is through our relationship with Allah that we recognize who we are, because this is a dual relationship, right? So for example, if you are a son, then you know what it means to have a father. If you are a husband, then you know what it means to have a wife. If you are an abd of Allah, then you know what it means to have a Rabb. But if you don't recognize the Rabb, you don't know that you are the abd. So if you forget Allah, Allah will make you forget yourself. This is a qa'idah. And so the other reason why this is very important is because our society, the society that we live in, and now a global monolith, because it doesn't matter where you go in the world, ideas through social media, through television and entertainment, proliferate every single household. It doesn't matter how far you go. Is the third and fourth wave feminism, which is the idea of female sexual liberation, right? The third wave and fourth wave feminism has to do with female sexual liberation. So the idea of taking all of the barriers of haya away. And so there's a Professor Unwin, who wrote this book pretty much in the 1940s. Right? It's called Sex and Culture. And till date, today, 2024, so 80 years later, it is still the main essential book on this topic, because it's a monumental study. He studied over 500 civilizations and why they fall. And he directs that the reason why great, powerful civilizations, whether it be the Romans or the Greeks or the Mughals, it doesn't matter where you go. One of the reasons they fall is they get so comfortable, luxury comes into the paradigm, into the kingdom, and the first thing that starts to happen, which leads to the decline, is what was supposed to be inside the bedroom comes outside the bedroom. So it's the idea of the third wave and the fourth wave feminism, this idea of female sexual liberation. Now, of course, there's a response to this, because every social movement, social studies and humanities students know this, every social movement has a response. And if it's a severe movement, it's a severe response. So what's the other side of response for this? Is the polar opposite response to extreme feminism is the red pill movement. Right? This is an academic lecture, so I will not mention any names, but everyone here knows what I'm referring to when it comes to social media, when it comes to people becoming icons of masculinity and manhood, right? So that's the polar opposite, but it's not opposite of what virtue is. It is the polar opposite to what an extreme was. And opposite of extremes must, by definition, be extremes. This is a logical principle. Opposite of extremes, by definition, have to be extreme. And so that's why this is so important, because there are specific people. I've seen this with my own students. I'm at a high school, and I'm on university campuses every single week for Qiwaamah. And so I have this for the past 2-3 years. That's why there was a month in February of 2023 where every single time I was going to a campus or going to a khutbah, this was the topic. Right? This was the topic that I was addressing, because I felt that this is something that's so important. Okay, epistemology. The Quran isn't a mere source for sociological, psychological, anthropological, historical, philosophical discourses. It's not that. It's not just a source. So let's say I have an idea, and I want to make this idea something that I can feel happy about. So I go into the Quran, pick a part of an ayah, and say, there you go. It's in the Quran. Right? Because then what we're doing is we're using the Quran as a source to validate our ideas. And is that what the Quran was revealed for? So that we can use it as a source to make us feel good about the things that we want to believe in. No, that in academia is called eisegesis. which is reading ideas into the Quran. But what we're supposed to do with the Quran is what's called exegesis, which is to take ideas and extract them from the Quran. Is this a Quranic idea, or am I using Quran as a source to validate my idea, or the idea of my group, or the idea of the main psychological community consensus within my region? And so, no, it's not that. Rather, what the Quran is the lens by which a Muslim would view all other branches of knowledge. If you hear, for example, if you hear masculinity, the first thing you should ask is there a word for that in the Quran? Did the Prophet use a particular word? And then what did he mean by that word? Because I want to understand this concept through that particular lens. Not through the lens that is pushed on me, but through the divine lens, through a sacred lens. So what I'm trying to say is that Islam transcends isms. It doesn't support any ism. And like voting season comes in, everybody is curious about this, right? So is Islam pro-liberals? Is it pro-Democrats? Is it pro-this or is it pro-that? No. It's not pro-anything. It's got its own system, right? Okay, so let's get into our study. First off is that, and there's no slide for this, because I don't want a slide for this, because this is something you have to remember for every maxim. And that is the whole component in our tradition of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a person who is going to be erecting something together, which is what we're going to see the linguistic definition of a man is in the Arabic language, is rooted in the idea of sacrifice. It's one of the same. And therefore, we're talking about manhood, we have to talk about patriarchy. Who is the greatest patriarch in all of humanity according to the Quran? Ibrahim alayhi salam. And if you study his life in the Quran, you will see time and time again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts him through an ordeal. That's what his life is. His life is an ordeal after an ordeal after an ordeal. And the conclusion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes, not you and me, Allah makes the conclusion, yeah, this person, when it comes to dealing with ordeals, is not like any other human being ever. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ كَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. He's not like anybody else. And so our tradition is a tradition that is rooted in role model figures. And they get to, their character defines us, or defines to us what masculinity is. And so that's what we're looking at here. You can see this in other Anbiya too. So for example, there are two people whose stories are meticulously charted in the Quran from beginning to the end. Only two. So they are Yusuf, like childhood and adulthood. Yusuf and Musa. Yusuf and Musa. From beginning to the end, chronologically. And in both cases, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about both of these people in different passages of the Quran, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُمْ. When they got to the age of maturity, when they became men. Right? آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. With a slight addition in Musa's ayah, but آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. We gave them discernment, the ability to make decisions, and knowledge. And after both of these verses, in both of their stories, the next scene is Allah tests Yusuf alayhi salam severely, and Allah tests Musa alayhi salam severely. Which goes to show what? That the moment that Allah makes you a man, the next moment you have to prove to yourself if you're a true man or not. And how do you do that? By passing tests, by passing ordeals, with grace and dignity, going through the hardships of life. That's what it means to be a man. And this is a consistent theme throughout the entire Quran. These are just some examples. Anyways, let's get started. So maxim number one. They're numbered for you, for people taking notes. So maxim number one. Sorry you guys, this is not a Jummah khutbah, so all of these things are going to be semi-academic. Right? He is subhanahu wa ta'ala placed at the pinnacle of manhood. His prophet, the patriarch, our paraclete. So let me quickly break this down. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did not send the Prophet ﷺ to teach us the Quran. Right? He also sent the Prophet ﷺ to, apart from teaching the Quran, to being the Quran. The Prophet is the embodied personification of the Quran, yes? And so if he is the one that Allah is telling us to mimic, to role model, to make him the ideal, then there cannot be any masculinity or manhood that will transcend our Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It cannot exist, ipso facto, by default. This is a qaida you have to intellectually agree on, because everything else is predicated on this. There cannot be an individual who is more masculine than the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is the point. Right? And so what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? He puts him at the pinnacle of manhood. And in the Quran, how is that referred to? Ala khuluqin azim. Upon the top pinnacle of good character. And then he's the picture for us, which means he's the father figure to us. Just like Ibrahim alayhi salam was the father figure to the Prophet sallallahu Abina Ibrahim. Right? And ittabi' millat Ibrahim. The Prophet was told, commanded in the Quran, to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam. We are told in the Quran to follow the Prophet sallallahu قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. So we are commanded to follow the Prophet sallallahu, but the Prophet sallallahu was commanded to follow Ibrahim. And what do we find? That the Prophet ﷺ, if he's our patriarch, if he's our fatherly figure, if we're supposed to follow him, that means that he becomes somebody that we must mimic. So our goal as an ummah is not to love the Prophet ﷺ merely. It is to become prophetic. To become prophetic in our actions, in the way that we interact. Because if he's the epitome of manhood and we become prophetic by default, the more sunan that we've adopted, the more of a man that we've become. Right? And he's our paraclete, right? Parakletos from Greek, which is a reference to the Gospel of John. The idea that the Prophet is our intercessor, is our teacher. And so he came to teach us. What does he come to teach us? إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He came to teach us good character. This was the essence of his message. So there's no pursuit of manhood without pursuing our master, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maxim number 2. When you study anything in the Sharia, you have to first study it linguistically, then technically, then how it's applied, right? Then its application or its fiqh. So words matter more than matter matters. What that means is that words matter more than the actual physical manifestation of that. Because al-lisan tarjuman al-qalb, right? The tongue is the translator of the heart. If the tongue is saying what it's saying, then the heart is in the right place. If you're, for example, a lover of God, then every time in your conversations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finds a place. Whatever we love and we're obsessed with, we will speak much about it. Right? So in the Sharia, when we define things, you have to look at words first. So Ra, Jim, and Lam, that's the root letters. So what does this say? What does that word say? The one in the middle. Rajul or? Rijl, very good. What's rijl? Legs. Right? So embedded in the word itself is the idea for someone who's standing. Someone who's standing. So it's not a matter of passivity. It's embedded in the word. Right? Like one of the Mauritanian scholars, my teacher, he said that it's not, you're a male if you can grow a beard. Right? But not every man, right, would give the full right to that beard. So what he's saying is this growing facial hair does not make you a man. That's not the mere litmus test. Maybe physically speaking, yes, you're a man, right? In terms of hitting puberty. But in terms of what it means to be a man, right, is to be able to stand up and make a difference. Be able to stand up and make a difference, right? So we get the rujula from. Then the root letters for Qiwaamah is Qaf, Waw, Mim. And we have Qiwaam from there, which means the one who can provide, the one who can sustain, the one who can take care of. But it also has the connotation from form 4, right? When you see fi'al as a pattern, it also is rooted to af'al or if'al, which has the connotation of aqama, to establish something, to raise something up. to give something weight, to give something support, right? And which means that it's muta'addi, it's not lazim. So quickly what that means is that if a word in the Arabic language is muta'addi, it means the action is spreading from you to someone else. And if it's lazim, it means it's subsiding within you. So the word qiwaamah is transitive, meaning it has to do with the other, not merely about the self. So therefore, one of the definitions of a man linguistically is the one who's living so that someone else can live better, because it's a transitive word. Another connotation is, what is a man also in the Arabic language, is imra'un, right? So that comes from mim ra hamza, right? Which has the connotation, again, of standing up, sustaining, being strong. And when you get to muruwa, this is the main word in the Arabic language that our scholars adopted to talk about masculinity. Right? And you would translate this to something around chivalry. This would be chivalry. Right? So it would be, that's the word that our scholars operationalize when they're dealing with this discussion. Muruwa, chivalry. So, putting that in context, maxim number 2 states, a true man is one who is bent on being wholesome. That's what marwa means, to become complete, to be whole, right? To have itmam. So that they're able to champion a cause and serve others. That's the idea. A person who seeks to be complete within themselves, so they're able to do something without. They're able to fulfill their own needs to such a degree that they're useful to someone else. And that's purely linguistic. Did anyone grab that? Yes? Okay. Right, so we can source these. I'm not just making this stuff up, right? It's coming from somewhere. Where's it coming from? So this is Al-Muruwa of Ibn Marzuban. He quotes Sayyidina Ali one day was outside, and he had a group of people sitting around, and they were discussing something. And so he asked them, what are you discussing? He said, we're discussing manhood. And so Sayyidina Ali says to them, أَوْ مَا كَفَاكُمُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ ذَاكَ فِي كِتَابِهِ. Is it not enough that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in His book, and then he quotes the verse, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. Is it not enough to understand manhood that Allah has already quoted about it in the book, in the Quran? And he quotes the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded people towards justice and towards excellence. And so now Sayyidina Ali gives tafsir, and he says, فَالْعَدْلُ الْإِنصَافِ. Justice means to treat people fairly. And then he says, وَالْإِحْسَانُ التَّفَضُّلُ. And excellence is to prefer the other person over yourself. Remember we talked about manhood being transitive? It's about the other, it's about extending from within you to without. Okay, so that's what it is. Al-ihsan al-tafaddul. Excellence is to prefer the other over yourself. And he says, فَمَا بَقِيَ بَعْدَ هَذَا. What's left to discuss after this? He's saying this is a complete definition. Right? So basically we can finish this entire PowerPoint because of Sayyidina Ali said, فَمَا بَقِيَ بَعْدَ هَذَا. There's nothing left to discuss after this. Right? Once you internalize this, you internalize the whole thing. So the rest of the presentation basically is commentary on this verse. So if you forget everything that we just said, and you're going to forget everything that I'm going to say now, just remember, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ is muruwa, is rujula, is qiwaamah, according to Sayyidina Ali. What does it mean to be a man? To stand for justice and to prefer other people over yourself, which is sacrifice. Okay? Maxim number 3. Our service to others is the route by which we climb the mountain of manhood. So imagine there's a mountain of manhood, right? And at the pinnacle of it is the Prophet ﷺ. And we're supposed to reach him to the best of our abilities, as close as possible to reaching the Prophet ﷺ. That mountain, the way you climb each rung of that mountain, the pegs of the mountain that we put our hands onto to climb, is service to other people. Our service to others is the route by which we climb the mountain of manhood. And that's from the late Muhammad Ali, rahimahullah. He said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Yes. And what's the source for this? So this is from Surah Al-Qasas. Musa alayhi salam has just found out that he is a fugitive and he's wanted. And so he has to flee Egypt. So he flees, but you know how is he fleeing? He's not going home packing stuff. That's not what fugitives do. They flee. He's got nothing with him. And he has to cross a desert. Right? And he comes to the outskirts of a city called Madian. And when he gets to the outskirts of the city, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what happened with him. And so, who needs help right now? If there was someone in Madian who was in the most deprived situation ever, out of all the citizens of Madian, it was actually Musa alayhi salam. And so what do we find? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا وَرَضَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. And when he came to the well of Madian, وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً. He found a group of people from amongst the citizens, the Nas, يَسْقُونَ. They were getting drinks for their sheep, for their animals. وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ. And he saw besides them this group of people. إِمْرَأَتَيْنِ. 2 women. And Allah describes these 2 girls as Taludan. They were wrestling, but with not each other. They were wrestling with their animals, because the animals want water, but they're ladies, and the guys are hogging the well. And so Musa alayhi salam is watching this at a distance. And what did Sayyidina Ali say? What was manhood according to Sayyidina Ali? Yeah.
To prefer others over yourself.
To prefer others over yourself. What was the other one? Justice and soft. And he's looking at it and that's not fair. That's not fair. They have animals too. Yeah. Should be taking turns. Right? And so, now Musa alayhi salam goes to him and says, what's the matter? What's going on here? You know, so they say, look, we're here for these to water our animals, but we can't do this because of the shepherds there. And then they say our father is a very old man. So letting him know this is not our job, we're just doing our father a favor. So he doesn't feel like they're incompetent. And also giving a warning shot to Musa alayhi salam, don't try anything, our father's a big deal. Okay? So Musa alayhi salam took her animals and he gave them water. And without saying a word to them. So did he ask for any money in return, any ajr in return? No, without saying anything. He went back to his spot. And he said to Allah, Ya Allah, I am very deprived. I could use any good that comes from you. Any good is good right now. Any good thing is a good thing right now. And the next verse, he gets hired, he gets married, and he gets a stay visa in London. Right? But what I want to show you is something interesting. When Musa alayhi salam was at his lowest point, does Allah take him out of his state, or does Allah give him more work to do? Yeah, Allah gives him more work to do. He gives him a choice. To stand up to do what is right, or to ignore it. So many a times, when we're not doing too well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us an opportunity to earn His grace. And that's what you're seeing here. Musa alayhi salam gets an opportunity to earn his grace, to earn his virtue. So a lot of times when we're down and under, we're looking for a way out. And many a times we see way outs around us all the time. You know what those are? Servicing other people. Doing something beneficial for the other. That is the key to your own suffering, your own deprivation. But you have to understand that that's an opportunity. Right? And opportunity, by the way, is a sacred word. The word opportunity in English is a sacred word. It comes from the same word as the word port. It's got the word port in it, right? Opportunity, port. Port, what's a port? Yeah. Where ships go, right? And so the idea was that if your bark, your ship, was lost at sea, there's no GPS at that time, you lost your bearings, and then a wind picked up from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and took your boat exactly to the port you wanted to go to, that was called an opportune wind. It was a wind sent from God to put your boat straight. And so this, what you're seeing here, that's an opportunity. That's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a special wind. So when you have a chance to help someone, think of it as a wind that Allah has given you away. That if you take this opportunity, other matters in your life will get settled. So maxim number 4. Good. So this is important, especially in the social media era, that it is the private victory that leads to public victory. Private victory that leads to public victory. So what does that mean? That means many a times, unless we are changing something within ourselves, it is not appropriate for us to try and do something without. Very simply put, I will give you a scenario that might touch home for a lot of people. And I don't mean this in any, I'm not trying to offend anyone. This is my personal experience. From 2 weeks ago, I was in New Jersey. One of my teachers was visiting from the UK, so we went to visit him. And we went to this beautiful, glorious masjid, right, in New Jersey. I'm not going to mention the name. Right, Musa was with me, so he's a witness to this. And we had the Fajr Salah there with four people who were from the local community and 14 of my students who traveled from here with me. We were there. And after the Salah, this was the day where the DC Palestine protest was happening. You guys remember that a couple of weeks ago? There was a DC protest, right? And so when that protest was happening, they had sent these huge buses to all the masjid communities so that the masjids could be filled and the people could be driven to DC. And lo and behold, when we were leading the Fajr prayer, the bus was out there and it was full of Muslims going to the DC protest who had, within a span of half an hour, if they were early, they would have gotten the Fajr prayer, which was something that they should be doing anyways. Right? So when you and I, we have a fard action that is necessary for the community to uphold, and that is not given any importance whatsoever, there are going to be consequences for that, mass consequences for that, right? And so what we find here is that if there's going to be any change externally, didn't we talk about that? One of part of manhood is transitiveness, is to change something out there, is to fix something out there. Well, the first thing you fix is the thing inside of you, which is the most difficult thing to fix because they don't want to listen to you. It's called your nafs. Right? Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah said, your nafs is like a wild horse. If you can tame it, it's your greatest asset. But if you can't tame it, it will destroy everything you hold in it. Because that's what a wild horse will do, it'll trample your kids. Right? So everyone gets an opinion. That's true, everyone can have an opinion. But not everyone is entitled to say it. What that means is that you have to earn your rank. Right? If you're going to be in a position where you can make an influence, where you can do something, you have to get there first. And that arduous journey is the private victory. That's what that is. Private victory is very important. This is why the order in Surah Al-Asr is إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Once the عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ happens, then وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. When the private victory happens, now there's a public domain. The problem in our communities now is that because of social media, everyone can have a public domain. Everyone can air their thoughts into this world. Right? But, well, is that a good idea? You know, when I graduated in 2012, my chef, when he was giving me his ijazah, he said, you know, one thing you remember is never publish anything until you're 40. Right? And so one of the other students is like, chef, what's a weird rule? What do you mean, don't publish anything until you're 40? He said, because until you're 40, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it's a weird thing to tell someone who's graduating from a rigorous program. Say, okay, congratulations, you know nothing. Right? Until you turn 40. But the idea is you have to put in your effort, you have to do the due diligence to get to a point where when you say something, people will actually listen and it matters. And it's not going to unfold you. So here's the rule, right? Minding your business mends your business. And so is there anyone here who doesn't have business within themselves they have to manage? You can raise your hand if you think everything's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Anyone? If there's someone here, please speak to me afterwards. Book your counseling sessions, inshallah. Right. So minding your business mends your business. Right? So So, and where do we find that? So this is in Adab al-Din wa Dunya. Sayyidina Umar is reported to have said, Aslu Rajul, the essence of a man, aqluhu, is his intellect. So a sharpness of wit. This is the essence of a man. Wa hasbuhu, and it is his honor, his nobility. Wa dinuhu, and it is his religion. Then he says, wa muru'atuhu, and it is his chivalry. And then he says, wa khuluquhu, it is his character. It is the essence of what makes a man a man. It says, what makes a man a man? According to Sayyidina Umar, it is his intelligence, it is his nobility, it is his commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is his chivalry, and it is his character. Any mention of strength? Any mention of number of horses they own, how big the house is, right? What we see on social media, what it means to, in the hustle culture, what it means to be a man, what type of car you drive, is it a muscle car or not, how much horsepower it has. You see any of that here? Who's this coming from? Is this coming from like a loser? Is it coming from someone who wasn't a true man? When you and I think in Islamic history, a real man, one of the top names on your list will be Sayyidina Umar. And this is his definition of what it means to be a real man. Right? So, maxim number 5, the journey to the mastery of khuluq is what fortifies faith. Okay? So what fortifies one's faith is one's character. How do we know that? Imam al-Hajjabi gives this beautiful analogy to us. He says, look, your iman is the most precious thing you have. That's here at the bottom. And he says, your iman is fortified by the Sharia by 5 fortresses. So outside of iman, you have like a security system. And he says the first security system is made of gold, it's yaqeen. The other one is made of silver, it's ikhlas. Then the next one is made of brick, it's the fun things that we do. Then the other one is made of, clay. So this is iron. Fard is iron. Sunnah is clay, right? Or brick, I should say. Sunnah is brick, and then khuluq is clay. It's mud. So which one is the weakest? Gold, silver, iron, brick, and clay. Which one is the weakest? Clay. So it's the first to go. The first thing we will lose that is sacred to our religion is our character, is our manners. And if our manners go, our sunnah is under attack. And if the sunnahs go, the fard is under attack. And this is true, isn't it? Like, has this ever happened to anyone where you woke up one morning and you did wudu, and then you pray 2 rak'ah, sunnah of fajr, and then you went back to sleep without praying the fard? Has that ever happened? Anyone that has ever happened? If it did happen to you, come speak to me after. Yeah. Point is, it'll never happen, because if you can fortify your sunnah, and if you can defeat the devil at this level, all of this is always protected. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, if you adopt his character, you don't have to worry about these things. And this is why the battlefield that we should be on all the time is perfecting our manners. Because if we can guarantee khuluq, we don't have to worry about the other things that preserve our iman. Everyone's concerned about preserving iman for the next generation, right? About the children, how do we preserve their iman? Well, one of the easiest ways to preserve their iman is to make them people of high character. Because khuluq guarantees the preservation of all of these. Right? Yeah, and manners make it the manners, obviously. There you go. Okay, so here's Lane's lexicon. You know that book? How many people studied Lane's, or they had to go through Lane's when you're studying Arabic? Just 2, 3 people. Okay, so when he's defining manhood or muru'ah, he's going to different other previous dictionaries in Arabic. That's what you see here. T.A. Mistaj al-Rus, right? This is al-Misbah al-Lughat, al-Ahnafs. He's going to different dictionaries to try and tell you what the Arab linguist said manliness was. So this is what his conclusion is. Brilliant. He says, so manly perfection, or muru'ah, is consisting in abstinence from things unlawful. Staying away from haram is manliness. Meaning if you give in to haram things, then you're not man enough. Because you couldn't stand up against your nafs. So you were a coward when it comes to the battle with your nafs. You lost the battle with your nafs, which means there's a depletion in manhood. And he says, and having some art or trade, so being productive. You're doing something. You're not procrastinating or lazy. Your life is amounting to something. You're busy, occupied in doing something. And he says, or in abstaining from doing secretly what one would be ashamed to do openly. Like you're transparent. It's not like you have a secret life where you do all these sins, or where you do all these things that are not noble, and then when you're in front of people, you're very noble. Alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum. Right? No, you don't have this duality. Or in the habit of doing what is approved and shunning what is held base. Or in preserving the soul from filthy actions and what disgrace in the estimation of men, or in good manners, or guarding the tongue and shunning impudence, or in quality of the mind by preserving which a man is made to preserve in good manners and habits. It's a pretty good translation, or a summary of what it means to be a man. You see that summarized here? This is from Aristotle, but Imam al-Ghazali sort of refines this further. Rahman al-Isfahani refines this as well. And so they say that a human being is made up of faculties. Right? So what are the different faculties? The faculty of ghadabiyya, right? Qudr al-ghadabiyya is like the irascible faculty, the faculty by which you want to do something when things don't go your way. So human beings are unique in that. Like plants can't do that. Like if there's not enough sunlight, the plant doesn't walk over the place where there's sunlight, right? So you can't change its condition. A plant cannot change its condition. It's a living thing, but it's not a thing that can change its condition. A human being can. That's Qudr al-ghadabiyya. Right? The propensity to change one's situation. Aqliya, this is the rational faculty. Then Qudr shahwaniya, this is the appetitive faculty. So a human being is a person who has, or an individual has desires that need to be fulfilled. And finally, Qudr shidda, the faculty of extremities. So he says that if you want to be a human being of high caliber, you have to balance each one of these. If you don't balance this, either you're someone who, when wrong is happening, you can't do anything, or when the wrong is happening, you do something which is worse. Right? So if something wrong is happening, because of your rashness, you do something that is worse than the wrong that is happening, and now there's compound wrong in the room. Right? So how do you do that? You balance it, and you have what's called shuja'ah. Shuja'ah is courage. Then he has hikmah, which is wisdom, which is the balance of the intellect. If you have too little, you're dull. If you have too much, you're cunning, right? You're trying to use your intellect to fraudulently take things from people or subdue people. Then desire, if you have none, you're not a human being. Imam Shafi said, you're like a donkey. And then if you have too much, then you're hedonistic. Everything is about fulfilling desires. So when you put it in balance, you get irfa, which is self-control. And then the faculty of balance, and he says, that's adl, that's justice. If you put that in balance, you get justice. So from here, you get 4 cardinal virtues. You get wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. And so any good character you can think about, any single one, comes from these 4. Like generosity. Generosity comes from courage. Because you're able you have the courage to give that which is yours away from you. You can part ways with that which you earned. You can't do that if you're a coward. If you're a coward, you can't be charitable. You say, what if I need it tomorrow? And so if you put all 4 in balance, you get rahmah. So rahmah is not the absence of courage. People have misconceptions. Rahmah means to be soft. No. Sayyidina Anas said in the battlefield, when the Sahaba would get scared, they would go behind the Prophet. That's Rahmat al-Alameen. Right? He's the vanguard of Rahmah. And in the middle of the battle, when other people get scared, they go behind him. So Rahmah doesn't mean someone who is not formidable as a foe to the other. Right? It means someone who has courage, they have wisdom, they have adl, and they have ifa. When you put that together, that's where you get the ultimate level of Rahmah. So Rahmah is the epitome of character. This is why it's our Prophet's most salient character. Right? And it is Allah's character, right? Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, sends Rahmat al-Alameen out of His Rahmah. So humans can learn to have true Rahmah. And be of those who are enveloped in Allah's rahmah, because that's the only way you go to Jannah. Through Allah enveloping you in His rahmah. Right? So what does it mean to be a man? It means to be in the pursuit of prophetic rahmah. And you can do that by developing these characteristics. Right? How are we doing on time? It's Asr, right? Okay, so we're like 40% done the presentation, but that's okay, inshallah. We are going to, if there's any couple of questions we ask, or there's going to be an answer on both, right? What's our schedule looking like?
Jazakumullah khair, Ustadh Syed Hassan, for your time. May Allah reward you and increase you in goodness. Say Ameen. We'll open questions to the floor, inshallah. If you have questions, please do ask them. We are very, very short on time, so please make it quick, inshallah. And then we'll pray for Asr.
So the qualities you mentioned added a deal from Umar radiallahu anhu. A lot of these seem like they could apply to women as well.
Yeah.
So what's the differentiating factor?
Yeah. Those maxims are coming up. But in short, the differentia is in the level of burden. This is in the Sharia, by the way. It's not just in one thing or the other. For example, the social burdens on a man are not the same as the social burdens on a woman, right? A quick example of that is military expeditions, jihad, right? It is not incumbent on women in circumstances, but in circumstances it will be incumbent on men. Things of the nature of a congregational prayer, coming out of your house to go to the masjid for congregational prayer is something that is largely in the madhabs, depending on the madhab, on the man, but not onto the women. Right? So it's the magnitude of those things, not perhaps the type, but the magnitude. So in terms of sacrifice, what is required for sacrifice for a lady is more biological, for childbearing, childbirth. But what is required for men is not just biological, it's so much more than that. Right? So that would be a good litmus test to look at. That's a good question. Any other questions? Great. Yes?
I wanted to know, it was probably in your lecture, but how does a man develop these qualities that you mentioned?
Yeah.
For the character?
Yeah. So this is a paradigm. Oh, the red you can't really see. I don't know why it's coming out like that. But this is a paradigm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Yes. We only sent you as a rahmah to all worlds, in the Prophet says. And the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا. I was only sent to teach. The key word is only. See the word only here? مَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا creates hasar, only. That إِنَّمَا at the beginning creates hasar, only. That إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That إِنَّمَا creates only. There are three statements now in us, in Quran and Sunnah, that say the Prophet was only sent for this. How can it be three different things? If it's only, it must be the one thing. So the first one says he's the rahmah to all worlds. The second one says he was sent as a teacher. And the third one said he was sent to perfect good character. But if they're all only, that means they're one of the same things. So what does it mean that the Prophet is a rahmah to all worlds? That means he was sent as a teacher. And what was he teaching? How to refine good character. So when you and I want to achieve this level, how do we do that? We have to do it through knowledge. You have to do it. It's not possible to be prophetic without knowing what the Prophet was about. Right? Without tadris. And that's why there's a whole maxim on all these ulama of the past telling us that you cannot do these things without knowledge. There has to be a base level of knowledge we all need to ascribe to. And if you can't do that, then the easy hack is to be around people who have imbibed prophetic sunnah in their heart. So then you don't have to study because you can just observe someone who lives with the prophetic character, and you can take from their fragrances. Okay. Which traditionally how it was done with your teacher. Yes?
Inshallah, we'll actually wrap it there. I'm so sorry. We are running late over time, and also is right around the corner. So just a quick reminder to everyone that when you're heading out, Asr is in Sports Hall, at the same place where it was for Dhuhr. There will be ushers outside to inshallah guide you to where you need to go. Just a heads up, if you need to make wudu, please use the washrooms here in PG. There's one on the first floor.